Hello, second graders. I will be reading the last chapter of Robin Hood, chapter 21, How Robin Hood Met His Death. How Robin Hood Met His Death. Give me my bent bow in my hand, and a broad arrow I'll let flee, and where this arrow is taken up, there shall my grave digged be. Robin Hood and his men, now the royal archers, went with King Richard, not King Archer, excuse me, went with King Richard the Lionhearted through England, settling private disputes that had arisen while the king was gone to the Holy Land. Then the king proceeded amid great pomp and rejoicing to the palace at London, and Robin, the new Earl of Huntingdon, brought his countess there, where she became one of the finest ladies of the court. And if you are wondering about, what is all this that's happened, that Robin and his men are the royal archers and things like that, you might want to go back and read chapter 20. So if you didn't read chapter 20, you might want to go back and read that. And then you can come back to this one. The royal archers were now divided into two bands. One half of them remained in London, while the other half returned to Sherwood to guard the king's preserves. Months passed by, and Robin began to tire of the customs of city life. He longed for the fresh air of the greenwood and the merry society of his yeomen. One day, seeing some lads at archery practice, he could not help but say, "Oh, woe is me! I fear my hand is fast losing its old skill at the bowstring." It's like, I'm losing my skill at archery. Finally, he asked leave to travel in foreign lands, and this was granted to him. So he kind of said, "Can I kind of hold my job while I go and do a little bit of traveling abroad in a different country?" And remember, the Robin Hood stories take place in England, so he probably went over to the continent of Europe to travel. He took Maid Marian with him, and together they went through many strange countries. Finally, in an eastern land, Marian sickened of a plague, and died. Oh no. They had been married only 5 years, and Robin felt as though all the light was gone out from his life. Poor guy. He wandered about the world for a few months longer, trying to forget his grief, then came back to the court at London and sought some commission in active service. So he's looking for a job. A commission is a job. But unluckily, Richard was gone again, his adventures, and Prince John, who acted as regent, sort of a substitute ruler, during the king's absence, had never been fond of Robin. He received him with a sarcastic smile. So see if you can visualize Prince John with a sarcastic smile. "Go into Sherwood Forest," said he coldly, "and kill some more of the king's deer. Perhaps then the king will make you prime minister at the very least upon his return." So Prince John is sort of making fun of Robin here. He's like, "Why don't you go kill some more of the king's deer, and my brother will make you the prime minister." That's kind of like the president. The taunt, so he's taunting, he's making fun of him. The taunt fired Robin's blood. He had been in a black mood ever since his dear wife's death. He answered Prince John hotly, like angrily, and the prince ordered his guards to seize Robin and cast him into the tower. Oh dear. So we don't know what Robin Hood said back to Prince John, but it must have been sort of naughty if he said, "Well, up to the tower." And we can see here the Tower of London is the city's ancient fortress built on Roman foundations. Once the king's home, it was later used mainly as a jail for famous prisoners. So Prince John is putting Robin in jail. After lying there for a few weeks, he was released by the faithful Will Stutely and the royal archers, and all together they fled to the greenwood. Wait a second. So Robin was put in the Tower of London, was put in prison, and he was there a few weeks, and then he was released by the faithful Will Stutely. So I am inferring that Will Stutely helped Robin to escape, and the royal archers. And then they fled back to the greenwood. There Robin blew the old familiar call, which all had known and loved so well. Up came running the remainder of the band, who had been royal foresters, and when they saw their old master, they embraced him and nearly cried for joy that he had come again to them. All renounced their loyalty to Prince John. So they gave up their loyalty. They said, he's not our king. And lived quietly with Robin in the greenwood, harming no one and only waiting for the day when King Richard would come home again. But King Richard did not come, and would never need his royal guard again. News reached them of how he had met his death in a foreign land, and how John reigned as king. Ooh, remember we learned in history that King Richard was killed by a stray arrow. I think that was in France, wasn't it? The proof of these events followed soon after, when there came striding through the glade the big familiar form of Little John. "Are you come to arrest us?" called out Robin as he ran forward and embraced his old comrade. "Nay, I am not the Sheriff of Nottingham, thank God," answered Little John. "The new king has removed me." Uh-oh, he's been fired. "And it is greatly to my liking, for I have long desired to join you here again in the greenwood." The new king waged war upon the outlaws soon after this, and he sent so many scouting parties into Sherwood that Robin and his men left the woods for a time and went into Derbyshire. But in one of the last skirmishes, Robin was wounded. The cut did not seem serious and healed over the top, but it left a lurking fever. In other words, a fever that didn't go away. Daily his strength ebbed away from him until he was in sore distress. One day, as he rode along on horseback near Kirklees Abbey, he became so faint that he reeled and came near falling from his saddle. So he almost fell off his horse. He dismounted weakly and knocked at the abbey gate. A woman shrouded in black peered out. "Who are you that knock here? For we allow no man within these walls," she said. "Open, for the love of heaven," he begged. "I am Robin Hood, ill of a fever and in sore need of help." At the name of Robin Hood, the woman stepped back, and then, after a pause, unbarred the door and admitted him. Assisting his fainting frame up a flight of stairs and into a front room, she loosened his collar and bathed his face until he was revived. Then she spoke hurriedly in a low voice. "Your fever will sink if you are bled. I will open your veins while you lie quiet." Oh dear. And we can see that this, so being bled in the circle there, is a medieval kind of a custom. When people were sick, they thought that if they cut someone's skin and that they kind of let the bad blood go out of their body. Today we know that this in fact doesn't help at all. It kind of makes people more sick. But at the time, this was a way that people thought that they could help heal people. So she bled him, and he fell into a sleep that lasted nearly all that day. He awoke weak and exhausted from loss of blood. Some say this abbess who bled him did it in all kindness of heart. Others say that she was none other than the former sheriff's daughter. Oh, remember the sheriff's daughter from the first chapter? She was supposed to be crowned queen for the day after the tournament. And we remember that Robin Hood gave the golden arrow to Maid Marian instead. So he shamed the sheriff's daughter. Okay. So some thought it was the sheriff's daughter, and she found her revenge at last in this cruel deed. Be that as it may, Robin's eyes swam from weakness when he awoke. He called wearily for help, but there was no response. He looked longingly through the window at the green of the forest, but he was too weak to make the leap that would be needed to reach the ground. He then thought of his horn, which hung at his knee, and blew out 3 weak blasts. Little John was out in the forest nearby, or the notes would never have been heard. At their sound he sprang to his feet. "Whoa, whoa!" he cried. "I fear my master is near dead. He blows so wearily." So he came running up to the door of the abbey and knocked loudly. Failing to get a reply, he beat in the door with frenzied blows of his mighty fist, and soon came running up to the room where Robin lay, white and faint. "Alas, dear master," cried Little John in great distress, "I fear you have met with treachery, betrayal, disloyalty. If that be so, grant me one last favor, I pray." "What is it?" asked Robin. "Let me burn Kirklees Hall with fire and all its nunnery." So Little John is really mad. He thinks someone has purposefully hurt his friend, and so he wants to burn down the whole abbey. Let's see what Robin Hood does. No, good comrade, answered Robin Hood gently. I cannot grant such a request. We must forgive all our enemies. Moreover, you know, I never hurt a woman in all my life, nor any man when in a woman's company. Ooh, courtly love, chivalry. He closed his eyes and fell back, so that his friend thought he was dying. Great tears fell from the giant's eyes and wet his master's hand. Robin slowly rallied and seized his comrade's outstretched arm. Lift me up, good little John, he said brokenly. Give me my good yew bow, and fix a broad arrow upon the string. Out yonder among the oaks, where this arrow falls, let them dig my grave. So he's asking little John for an arrow, and where he shoots this arrow, he says, that's where I want you to bury me. And with one last mighty effort, he sped his shaft out the open window, straight and true, as in the days of old, till it struck the largest oak of them all and dropped in the shadow of the trees. Then he fell back upon the sobbing chest of his devoted friend. This is the last, he murmured. Tell the brave hearts to lay me with my bent bow at my side, for it has made sweet music in my ears. Then all of a sudden Robin's eyes brightened, and he seemed to think he was back once more with the band in the open forest glade. He struggled to rise. Ha! A fine stag, Will! And Allan, never did you strum the harp more sweetly. Ah, how the fire blazes! And Marian, oh, my Marian, come at last. So died Robin Hood, but his spirit lives on through the centuries in the hearts of men who love freedom and chivalry. They buried him where his last arrow had fallen, and set up a stone to mark the spot. On the stone were carved these words: Here underneath this little stone lies Robert, Earl of Huntingdon. Never archer as he so good, and people called him Robin Hood. Such outlaws as he and his men England will never see again. And that is the end of Robin Hood.